Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Smart Cities webinar. Thanks for joining us. This one is called Citizen Engagement for Smart Cities. The webinars form part of the Smart Cities 2018 conference. Hopefully most people have had details by now. It will be taking place on February the 1st at Chelsea, Stamford Bridge 2018. There will be more details to come on the agenda and updated information on the 5th of June. I'm glad you could join us today for this webinar around citizen engagement. Understanding the way that citizens can be engaged within smart cities and how cities can relate to citizens has been a big barrier. It was something that came out of our more recent Smart Cities 2017 conference. So we're delighted today to be joined by Chris Cooper, the CEO of Knownow Cities, and Gemma Ginty, Urban Futures Lead at Future Cities Catapult. Today's webinar is going to talk a little bit more about how to inform and consult with citizens, empowering citizens and driving innovation through engagement with citizens. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the first speaker. If you do have any questions, there should be an option to wave a hand, which you can do. We want to try and save questions for the end of both speakers. However, please feel free to put a hand up and we can see what the questions are. Alternatively, you can email through any questions. But without any further ado, I'll pass you on to Gemma from Future Cities Catapult, and she will introduce the first presentation. Gemma, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for the invitation to present. So, I suppose the topic is on citizen engagement, and with the role of, if you don't know, I suppose Future Cities Catapult is an urban innovation centre in London, and our role is to bring together citizens, academia, industry and cities to, I suppose, tackle the challenges of cities in a citizen-centric but also in a city needs way. So we get a lot of questions around how to do great engagement or what's innovative engagement, and I want to demystify this role of innovative engagement slightly, and to kind of focus on what is the kind of the core purpose of it and how it needs to work to get people on board and to build good relationships. And I think the challenge of engaging at this time is that we are also viewed by other, I suppose, politicians in terms of engaging at election time or trying to get people involved, and people have a distrust of these types of establishment or policies. So the purpose with smart cities is to go beyond that, I suppose, traditional way of engagement and build on those relationships. So this is just an overview of some of the projects that we are doing across the UK. And what's important to note is that with each project, there isn't a standard way of doing engagement. You need to examine what the project's aims are, who are the groups that they're trying to engage with, what is the context we're trying to engage with. Is this a kind of a small city, a city of massive challenges, and what's the duration of the project? Because each project will demand different types of engagement. So just to, I suppose, in order to kind of get to the principles of what good engagement is and how it works, I thought it would be useful to go through these kind of 6 key questions. So what is it? Why do we do it? How do we do it in terms of our methodologies? When is the right time to do it? Who do we do it? And where should we be doing it? So just to kind of recap from the beginning, I said primarily it's about conversations. And we've been building conversations in cities before we had technology, but we've been doing it in a more low-scale, informal way. The advantages we have now is that we have tools that we can build these conversations in a more interactive way or in a more scalable way. So there's lots of tools around Facebook, Fix My Street, participatory budgets, and these are all about conversation builders. But what's important is that in any type of engagement, you need to be open to receiving and integrating the input of engagement. Because oftentimes what happens is engagement is seen as a tick box exercise rather than actually making projects better or getting people on board. So in terms of the whys, you know, the cities are catching up with other organizations in terms of engagement. We want to, so in the likes of Disney, they're already thinking about what is the next service experience? How do we get, you know, sell more products? How do we keep people involved? And that's what cities are trying to catch up with. So We do this kind of user-centered design approach in order to make more intuitive products and service, and also de-risk projects so that actually you can justify the investment. But also we want to understand what makes delight in the everyday, what are the things that will capture people's imagination, and also understanding pain points and needs in the design process. This is just an example from a project we did with the University of Glasgow. And we did quite a strong user-centered design approach where we interviewed staff and students and businesses. And through a process of concept development, these ideas came out which were responding to the pain points that we saw with the user experience. We then tested those ideas with students in order to make them better and stronger. And what's important also to think about is that this process is a kind of an education journey, that you're continually trying to inform and educate both the public and the cities about smart cities. And this quotation is from the 70s, from the great, or 60s, from the great urbanist Kevin Lynch, said, "We see the city as a purposely designed school, a place for learning and growing throughout life." And that's, I suppose, with smart cities, this is a continual journey. We don't just have a smart city and it's finished. We get on to the next thing. It's a continual process of change. So the how is where we kind of come into the practical kind of methodology. And the scale ranges from just giving information. You see the arrow here moving up through to empowerment. And at each step of this ladder, there's, I suppose, increasing engagement, time, resource that's needed in order to move into empowerment. But empowerment is where you want to be, is where you want to give people the resources to make the changes that they want to do in cities. What's important also with the how is to allow the kind of resources and time that's needed to do these, and willingness to test out solutions. You won't always get the results you expect from engagement, and you have to be willing to change tactics and adapt to the audiences that you're interacting with. What's also important with this type of engagement is to have a good facilitation and empathy for the audiences that you're working with. We designed this in this slide, this kind of journey route of thinking about kind of the stages of a project and, you know, where engagement would be useful. So, you know, from the very beginning, it's, you know, you're researching to define the problem. And underneath there's some methods you can use in terms of doing some surveys, some citizen panels, and then you just do some ideation to outline the possible opportunities. And there's lots of ways to do that through co-design workshops, crowdsourcing platforms, pop-up stands, and it depends what's kind of, you know, what's already happening in that community. You know, use the resources that are there. You then narrow the scope of the solutions, prototype them, see if they work, and then most importantly, get a feedback in terms of the implemented solutions. You know, there's nothing worse than having failed pilots that didn't get traction, and then there's all the confidence is lost in this type of approach. And I'll quickly just go through these. These is just, we put together a methods book for a project we were doing for the Horizon 2020 project, which shows different methods for smart cities doing engagement. One of these is on a community walk. This is a really simple way to show people what's going on and the changes of maybe in a demonstrator area, where you bring the kind of the leader of this project, bringing citizens around. You know, this is low cost, you know, it's medium level of engagement. There's no skills required from the participant, and it's a good way to give it information and engagement. Getting people involved, you know, a good way is to using kind of mapping tools. There's lots of online tools where people can give their thoughts on, you know, changes in a development, but also it can be done in a physical way, and physical maps in a kind of in a controlled living lab environment. Collaboration, some methods we've used is kind of engaging the champions in different communities to do some of the engagement, because they're the trusted people in a community, so it gives them the tools in terms of doing research, doing workshops, and then getting them to feed into a design process. And finally, just on empowerment, so there's lots of examples in the UK in suppose the Space Hive crowdsourcing platform for civic projects. Edinburgh are doing a participatory budget. And this allows people to vote on the kind of projects that they want to be implemented in their community, but also input and ideas and kind of decide how the financing should be spent. I'll just skip through this just in time. This was a project we did with Organicity, and this is very much kind of bottom-up experimentation, where you want, I suppose, citizens and developers to kind of propose ideas of for smart city solutions, and they respond to an open call. They're given funding, but they also have to do inclusive co-creation. And I suppose there's another open call, so we've learned from the process. So just kind of speeding through these. So just going back to the 6 questions of the, what is it, why do we do it, how do we do it, and when do we do it? So the critical thing about the when to remember is that people are time poor and you have to fit into their schedule. So people are used to receiving services when and where they want them. So you have to think about that in terms of engagement. Don't expect people to turn up to a remote place in order to do engagement. Get people involved at the beginning of the process and don't give them finished solutions. It's the mistake of many development projects where the architects show finished development project with just giving information rather than doing any code development. And the point here is that code development is not kind of a nuisance or a barrier. It actually will make projects better and get people involved in terms of delivering that solution. The who, in terms of understanding who we're trying to engage with, who is the buyer, do they want tailored services, is it the citizens, the civil servant, map out what their needs are and how do they normally communicate. What does a day in the life look like, or what does a journey through the experience that we're trying to design around? And I suppose, like I said before, tap into existing clubs and networks and see who can be champions. The final question is just on, going into citizens' habitats. I put this picture of just, I suppose, where I live. It's looking at, the different nature habitats, but also thinking about how do you look at, how different people live in the cities, because if you're trying to do this abstractly from a technology office, you want to understand what are the pain points, what would make someone's life more easier, and that people are generally very busy and they would be focusing on their home or their family. And the Smart City project will not play a major role in their life unless it responds to what's interesting for them. So context is really important. Different cities will have different needs, and even outside of the UK, there's different democratic approaches which create different types of citizen engagement. But most importantly, we need to find ways to step into other people's shoes and imagine what are the problems that are being faced. So to sum up, what is the conversation tool? The engagement is how do we create rich conversations with people who are using cities. The why is to understand where are the moments of delight, how can we create more compelling services. The how is the kind of the number of toolboxes and methodology, but really to establish what you're looking for. And when, to remember, people are time poor, they need regular updates. Who is the buyer, who is the beneficiary, and where? Go into the habitat, step into other people's shoes. Just, I suppose, in time, I'll skip, this is just some principles, and we can come back to those if some people have questions on just kind of really good engagement. And just to finish off, I suppose I thought this quotation was quite good in terms of when dealing with people, remember you're not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. And I suppose we just need to be cognizant of the responses we get, that there might be surprising results, and we will have to adapt to those and adapt the use cases to the results we get. So that's all I have for now. Matt, if you wanted to take over.
Thanks very much, Gemma. Great presentation. Just a quick question before we sort of move on to to our next presenter from Chris. You talked there about the kind of engagement with the citizen. I mean, if you're working on a project or you're a local authority looking to implement, a smart city initiative, how would you go about that kind of initial engagement with the citizen? Would you kind of look at something, for instance, using local press, coordinating with the local volunteer centre? What's the initial step you would take to have that engagement if you were a city leader looking to do that, or even a project leader, for instance, from a private sector company?
Yeah, the initial step, I suppose, different councils will have different assets or skills and capabilities, and it's important to understand what they're already doing well. So rather than kind of bringing in a generic strategy of engagement that may cost them too much, and not recognizing the assets that are already there. So if they already have a newsletter that works, or that they have London has the Talk London forum, or they have engagement officers that do annual surveys. Okay, we can work with what they have and then adapt a plan around the assets that they have, and then think about bringing in, from the Catapult point of view, we try to bring in our capabilities to skill up some of the people that are working in the council to think about how do we plan a journey of this engagement. Do we do some online surveys? You can do digital diary studies, which are quite, easy things to do, but it depends on the timing. What do you want to get out of the engagement? Because you don't want to just do engagement to create lots of content that you're not going to use. So you have to think about how are we going to use it for the stage of the project. So, it does require a bit of planning, thinking through the audiences and thinking through timing and the resources that you have, because this isn't just something that people do in their spare time. It needs to be planned like any other technical project.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much, Gemma. Thanks for your very slick presentation, I have to say. Chris Cooper, CEO of Knownow Cities, is going to be up next. Chris spoke at our 2017, well, I keep saying 2017, we're in 2017. He spoke 3 months ago at our Smart Cities conference, gave a great presentation around this, so we wanted Chris to come back and talk a little bit more about the work he's doing and to sort of follow on from Gemma and complement that presentation. So without any further ado, I'll invite Chris to come on. Please do feel free to put questions up and ask any of the speakers questions, and we will be making copies of the webinar available to download after this, and you can obviously follow up with Chris or Gemma as well. Over to you, Chris.
Hi guys, yeah, thank you, and thank you, Matt, thank you, Gemma. Really, really positive words there. So without further ado, yes, I was part of the team that presented in February, and so this is a kind of a focus on the citizen aspect and telling you some stories as to how you can possibly engage citizens and why that's important, and it dovetails really nicely with Gemma's message as well. It's almost like we planned it, so well done, guys. So just a little bit about Knownow and Knownow Cities. So we were established in 2014. Right at the start.
Sorry, just to jump in there, can you just share your screen at the moment? We've just not seen the slides.
Oh, okay. Sharing. It should be show. Is that now doing?
That's the one, Chris. Thank you very much. Yep, we've seen that now. We've got Do Smart Cities Exist. We've got the first one up.
Okay, so so the answer to that question is no, they don't. But a little bit, just to go back a slide, which we will just go back a slide. So yeah, so a little bit about us. We are an award-winning smart city innovator. We were established in 2009. We're 14. Sorry, we're based in University of Portsmouth's innovation space down on the south coast. We've got a lovely sunny day down here. We innovate our own products, and as well as innovating other people's, creating other customers' products in the smart city context. And we're members of the City Standards Institute based at the Future Cities Catapult. Our focus is trying to create those eureka moments out of data, and our focus is always constantly on making sure that information is secure, sound, reliable and resilient, and it does something useful. So we come from this smart cities piece from having spent around 10 years in the smart cities game. I was lucky enough to be one of the team that co-wrote PAS 181, the BSI Smart City Interoperability Framework, and that is really one of the things and key messages that I'd like you to take away from this, is that to realise smart cities, standards are very important and should be relied on. And that backs up Gemma's message, because it's about how do you pick up the output from those conversations and focuses on the what, why, where and how. So do smart cities exist? And I would argue no, they don't, not yet. And there's a historical reason for that, primarily driven by austerity in the short term, because we've seen massive amounts of cash being taken away from public sector, and they were often seen as the catalyst and where you go to. I've been hearing from Innovate UK that there won't be any more smart city platforms. Cityverb in Manchester was the last. So when it comes down to funding, we need to be smart as to how we do this. I'd also argue that we tend to have a more combative and legally centric way of doing contracting. We don't have this concept of collaboration, and by definition smart cities are collaborative. So as we're all arguing over whether I've got this I or T crossed, you need to have a different focus, and I think that's also backed up by the way that we use numbers and outcomes, and possibly the wrong ones. So when we're talking about economic activity, it's all about GVA, but no one talks about happiness. So we need to maybe look at how can we use information and technology to drive a different set of outcomes, a different set of numbers that leads us to be more collaborative, that unlocks the cash that is out there, but you just need to go and know how to go and get it. There are some other things that are coming along, and one of them that's massively important from a citizen perspective, and this is really good news, and as an IT engineer I don't often say this, but we've got a new data protection regulation coming in called GDPR on May the 25th. It comes into force. Everyone should be working to it. If you don't know what GDPR is, there's some excellent resources online, and get in touch and I can give you a fact sheet that gives you some links to places to go. GDPR is massive though, and one of the things that it's driving is it empowers the citizen to have control over their data. And this is really important. So when you're looking at citizen engagement and trying to build up trust between exchanging information for services to unleash the benefits of the digital economy, you've got to have trust between two parties, and GDPR establishes a sound foundation for organisations to take responsibility for personal data. This is good. It means that data that you don't need to have, you shouldn't have, which means you are not risking that exposure to hacks, to security leakages. But also, any data that you do have, you've got to look after and be responsible for, and got to have the processes and systems and policies and training and talent to make sure that that is carried out in a proper way. This is good for IT, this is good for citizens, and it's good for business. So become GDPR compliant now, please, everyone. Okay, so apart from that regulatory twist, we also have, as I said, a focus on looking at standards. And although PAS 184 has just been released and it's getting all the headlines, its predecessor was PAS 181, which provides the foundations and framework. I just want to go over and quickly highlight and remind us all as to what PAS 181 was trying to provide. And PAS 184 builds on that, but the focus is on 181 here, and that's saying, look, you need to have a vision, and that flows directly from what Gemma was saying earlier. You know, what are the conversations in the cities that you're in? What are the people asking for? What is it you want to be famous for? What do you want to do? What's the outcome? You also need to make sure that it's digital, so that middle pillar, and recognizing that you've got some type of technology, there's some infrastructure, there's some things that need to be provided to make that happen. And the other piece that is really key is making sure that things are open and collaborative. You know, breaking down that point I said earlier that cities aren't collaborative because of the way that we contract. So you have to. There are no silos. There's pools of information that people can dip into and out of and share and mold and manipulate and exchange and do some cool things with, that allows you to drive outcomes and new analysis that allows you to go and do something different. Cities exist already. We don't need technology to make a city thrive. Cities thrive because people are there and making those economic connections. And the final piece is around the citizen-centric aspect. And this is really, really important because people live in cities, people make cities. And if there's one thing that we've learned over many years is that different places have different vibes, and that's because the people in there have different views, different wants, different needs, different desires, and they shape and drive the city's outlook and the things the city wants to be famous for. Underpinned by the realities of geography, the realities of what has been left before and what's being provided for in the future. So the end game for PAS 181 is this information marketplace concept, and we'll get back to this right at the end of the show, which says, you know, how do you make that citizen in the middle of the city information marketplace? And you have all this other complex stuff, those pillars, including your energy, water, waste, telecommunications, those things that deliver it, versus the citywide governance aspect, which is what often the role of the local authority is taking on as owning and managing how you bring all these parties together to then deliver that information exchange at the top that's delivering those great services and that customer delivery, but making sure that the citizen is the centre of everything. So let's go into tell some stories as to how places are doing that at the moment. And so cities need to reflect the needs of the people that work and live and play there. And I think, you know, there's two places in the UK, for example, that I think are on top of it. I think Manchester's coming close with what's coming out of City Verve, and there'll be other places. You know, you could add to this list Milton Keynes, Peterborough. But my favourite two are Bristol and Glasgow for different reasons. Bristol because it was more of a bottom-up approach. Glasgow because of the ability of turning that brilliant accelerator program a few years ago into a really cool data visualization exercise. Check out those portals. This is bringing data to life and actually telling some stories as to what's going on in that place. In terms of citizen engagement, there is a whole bunch of really good tools out there that are available on the commercial market. I'm not necessarily endorsing any, I'm just saying, look, you should go out and check these out. So although, you know, D4SC, they're doing some really cool things, as our digital town, Citizen Lab, and I'm part of the citizen focus group of the EU Smart Cities Marketplace, which is really promoting this idea and concept that citizen centricity and privacy by design are absolutely fundamental. And is enshrining that PAS 181 standard of making smart cities citizen-centric. And on the bottom left, I've got Miko. Miko are an example. There's others out there, such as Digi.me, of personal information managers. And this is the API of Me concept, where citizens are now going to become their own economic entities. And this is really important because one of the arguments as to why smart cities haven't occurred is maybe the economics haven't been aligned to the citizen, they've been aligned to organizations. And now we've got the ability to take advantage at an individual citizen level of earning real true value, and that might be cash, it could be time gained, it could be productivity, it could be new services. And we've also got the complex data collection that allows us to articulate whether we're happy or not with that new value that's been accrued. And Miko is just one example of a way of you being given the tool to monetize this data. So in short, you've got some great platforms, you've got a shift in technology, and you've also got some great examples out there of early storytelling that's bringing data to life. So there's no fear in saying anyone's going to be first here. No, it's happening, and you can actually get on with it. Just to quickly introduce one of Knownow's own innovations, which is Innovate UK supported. It's a service called Consentua. And what Consentua is trying to do is simply put citizens in control of their data by giving them a graduated view of how much data they exchange and what's the quid pro quo for exchanging that information for a service. If you'd like some more info, just check out consentua.com. There's a short little video that shows you how it works. But it's not just about delivering some GDPR compliance on consent to have your personal data and being able to say, yes, I can have the right to be forgotten, and I can see that I'm giving the consent in an unambiguous and consistent way. It's also about enabling trust. And when you've got trust and you link it with some of those services such as MECO or D4SC, you're able to actually start improving the quality of information you exchange between citizens and organisations that are delivering those services. You're making them very personal and citizen-centric, what I call the rockstar experience. So you're able to go somewhere new or somewhere old and you get given the service that you expect, and that's based on a respect for you, respect for your choices, as well as giving you the things that you want. So that could be, if you go into Greg's, it could be your favourite cream cake, or for my personal experience, it would be going to a bar and getting my favourite beer. But it's about having those personal experiences. The question, though, is that's all well and good, and that might suit retail, it might suit healthcare, but how can we at a city level do something extraordinary that puts citizens in control, makes us collaborative, generates really cool outcomes, open and collaborative data, delivers the elements of technology, and also is citizen-centric? And for me, the place to start has to be smart grid. And the reason for this is that we are at a cusp of doing something awesome with the ability to harness energy at a relatively low cost, both from an environmental perspective and economically as well. PV cells are following Moore's law. So in 18 months' time, you'll get double the output for half the cost than you are today. Aligned to this is storage, and with the things that Mr. Musk is doing with his Tesla battery factory, with his passion to give and enable every home to have their own energy storage capability on top of the solar PV cells that look like tiles, you can start to create your own little mini power station. The key thing, though, is how do you then share and consume this energy in an equitable way that allows you potentially to earn some revenue from this? So Knownow's working with Community Infrastructure Group and testing through some funded projects across the UK, this concept of enabling a smart grid that allows you to gain economic value. This will meet a lot of the goals and objectives that we established at the start around PAS 181 of having a vision. So what do you want to be famous for? I'd like to have low carbon, low cost energy. Citizen-centric, I'd like to have the economic reward for having this energy. Technology enablement, because I need to share data around my energy use, because my neighbour might need my energy from my freezer to run their microwave, or deplete my PV, deplete the energy, the battery storage on my car, because I have an EV car plugged into my energy storage that I'm generating locally from my local PV on my roof. And all of this enables you to have this open collaborative exchange of information, which is generating economic value, which allows you to then establish your information marketplace with citizens right at the top. So in short, the focus is, well, how do I start and where do I go to make that happen? And how does that flow from Gemma's message earlier? Well, I think you've got to do three things simultaneously, but at various different paces. So I'd start at the bottom by creating an open evidence base and starting those citizen conversations and asking what is it you want to do and how you want to do it, exactly as Gemma said. Target some digital infrastructure and investment and to make things connected, and including and not forgetting skills enablement as well. So you're creating that local GVA and it's not just being exported to another place. And finally, you look at enabling smart grids that provide the foundations both at a technology level and also at a information level to start sharing and exchanging information and generating economic wealth. And there's plenty of cash out there. There's plenty of studies that will suggest that you can earn a good rate of return. And there's an example of a company that's gone out to the open market in Swindon, and they have delivered citizen accrued citizen-owned along with the local authority, and people are earning cash from the sunshine due to the PV that's on their roof. The extension would be connect it to some storage, connect it to a smart grid, enable the technology and start the conversations. If you'd like to know more as to how Knownow can help you, and if you'd like to see Consentia working in your places and your apps, then give us a shout, and those are my contact details. But thank you, Matt, for this opportunity. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Chris. We've not got any hands raising at the moment. However, I've made a note of a few questions I'd like to come to you both on, actually. You talked a little bit more there about sort of like the rockstar approach, and you talked about Bristol being one of the most prolific in terms of what you've seen from a bottom-up approach. There's a recent report just come out, I think it came out a couple of months ago, from RICS, R-I-C-S. The author was Dr. Claire Erickson. It found that fewer than half, 47% of UK cities, had even established definition for a smart city, and just 22% had a smart city action plan. What do we need to do to kind of get cities aware of it and make it more defined to understand the benefits before we even move on to how they talk to citizens? What are the key areas of quick wins, really, to get cities in line with the smart city projects and the opportunity?
So I can only talk about my own personal experience, which is stop talking about technology, start talking about how you're going to make people's lives better, and that could be both improved service delivery. So if that could be around a specific service like bin collection or healthcare, and also focus on the economic benefits, that if you do something, why would it benefit them? If you can have a conversation with a citizen that says, by the way, I'll give you £5 a week if you just do this for me, it's not about technology, it's about giving someone something that they value. And you've got to find out what that price point is or what that thing of value is, and then start that project in that place to then give you an excuse to do another project in that place. And also it creates the foundations for the governance structure to allow the ongoing sustainability of that project. Because if you look at somewhere like Barcelona, the government money ran out, the batteries needed replacing on the sensors, and there was no one around to do it. So a question I always ask places is, who will replace the batteries when you've left your job? And if there is no one, then the chances are you probably shouldn't be doing that project.
Yeah. Gemma, have you got any comments on that from a Future Cities perspective, in terms of how you kind of get the concept across to a city leader?
Yeah, I think what I suppose we'll draw on, we've recently done a review of global city strategies across kind of 4 continents and 20 cities. And we wanted to see, I suppose, kind of take stock of what's happened in the past 5 years since smart cities became a thing. And so we'll see what people have been doing with strategies in terms of how have they implemented them, what have been the successes, and what have been the approaches in terms of top-down or bottom-up. And I think one of the key findings is that there has to be a kind of a vision for a city. And it's not just a smart city vision. There has to be a vision of where the city wants to go, like Chris said, in terms of how you want to improve the lifestyle. And the smart city strategy is an enabler of that. And I think that sometimes the problem with some smart city strategies is they're seen as a separate thing, and they don't then get the budgets or the support of the different parts of the council, from the silos of the transport, the waste, the energy. So that, I suppose, it's that transition that we've seen that's happening from standalone strategies of trying to make a kind of a branding around smart cities to actually then being embedded in the overall strategy of the delivery arm of what the cities are to do. So, I think this is keyboard. So that in terms of kind of cities making the transition, it's good to look what other cities have been doing, look up where the successes have been, like what Chris said about Barcelona. if they're just putting in sensors for sensor's sake, they haven't really realized what they want to sense, and it's not critical to business, or you don't critically need that data. So actually putting, thinking about what is, a data audit, what data do we have, and where would live data really help us? So there is investigation that needs to be done. But, if you just want smart city as a kind of a poster child of your city, it will fail because it's not being done for the right reasons.
Right, great stuff. Just one final question to both of you, actually. I'm an avid reader and subscriber of Wired magazine, as I'm sure some other people out there are, and they do a feature at the very beginning of each edition where they say, what's your sort of buzz project, or what are the big things, whether it's an app or a project that you think people should be keeping an eye on. So I'm going to come to you first, Chris, and say, outside of what you do and knowing the projects you're working, is there anything we should be keeping an eye on, whether it's a city, a project, or an area which is prominent and which is coming to the fruition this year?
I think there's two things you should be looking at. One is the impact of GDPR, because it's going to have an impact on your local authority services. And the other one that I would look at is from a technology perspective. I think it's very exciting, and it's been around for a good decade, is augmented reality. So the ability to overlay information through a device, and you saw it with Pokemon Go. It's better than VR because it's putting data into the real life. And I think if you can start showing off data that just happens to be there and start telling the stories with it, that will then lead to a change in how we use information to decide what is best to do. An example of this could be air quality. If we knew, for example, that air quality as we were driving, because it was hitting our head-up display, that our car was polluting the environment, and you were being rerouted because schools were about to be thrown out. And you also changed the charging mechanism because local authorities have been given permission to charge for low pollution zones. You can then start having a massive impact using price information to change behaviour. And I think places like Oslo, and I'm trying to encourage Portsmouth in particular because of its geography, to think differently as to how you manage air quality, because air quality, congestion, speed of traffic are all linked, because it's well known if you want to reduce air pollution, you make places go faster. Making places go faster may not lead to greater economic activity, but it could improve your air quality. Why not do something extraordinary and use information to change people's behaviour to go slower, but get out of the car, create more economic activity, and create cleaner air? And I think that will be the big game changer in the next 2 to 5 years.
Brilliant. Gemma?
Yeah. So I suppose the big area that I'm looking at that's going to have a big, that's kind of converging, the convergence of the automobile industry and the computing industry with autonomous vehicles. And I suppose they have come on our radar with, they're in testing, I suppose, with Milton Keynes and Grennan. But there's been kind of recent studies down in the US in terms of what could be the A to Z services of an autonomous vehicle, in terms of what are all the different niche groups that it could serve, in terms of, people with disabilities, older people, families, single person autonomous vehicles, delivery, and what is the whole ecosystem that needs to support an autonomous vehicle system from, the last, we talk about the last mile, but the last 10 meters of a delivery, from the concierge services and the kind of the people interfaces with autonomous vehicles. So I think it's really exciting. I think there's a kind of a I suppose there's a, all of the industry, the vehicle partners are kind of doing mergers with computing companies. So there's a battle going on at the moment, and I think we need to shape what that should look like, rather than it just being rejected as, autonomous vehicles are not suitable for cities.
Right.
So
Yeah.
The other.
Well, sorry, I just had a question coming. Sorry, I interrupted. Just a question coming for yourself, actually, Gemma, from Vipashi Ghosh, who's one of our registered webinar attendees today, and she's got a question for you saying, the question citizen engagement to Gemma. There are different types of citizens. How, to your experience, cities ensure incorporating all kinds of citizens' voices, especially cities of global south? What kind of strategies would you propose for including the different, often conflicting citizens' voices?
Okay, I think that's a really good question. I think we've come across this on many projects. I think one thing you can start is just using your data to start off to see what are the kind of demographics in your city in terms of what are the main groups in terms of, you know, elderly, nationality, ages. And then I suppose once you have a sense of the different types and groups, you can then do a kind of a screening to think about, you know, if there's a certain project around energy, how do we get people around, you know, who are high energy users or who are energy champions, or there's certain kind of behaviors. So you would do kind of design a kind of a screener to kind of get in those different groups. But it's also, that's where you have the convergence of that qualitative data and the quantitative, where it tells you statistically, you know, who are the kind of the main groups in a city.
Brilliant. Right, well, thanks very much, and thanks for that question. I'd like to take stock of, just give a conclusion. It's obvious from speaking with and hearing from Gemma and Chris today that there is lots going on, and there are lots of ways and solutions that you can get to engage with citizens. This webinar today is part of a series of webinars we're going to be doing over the next year leading up to Smart Cities 2018. Future Cities Catapult were very supportive of the conference this year and will be involved next year. So we'd like to thank Gemma and Christopher today for taking time out to present, and the webinar recording will be available to download for everyone today and for wider people, whether it's in your organisation, colleagues, friends, etc. There will be some information coming out about this and Smart Cities, including our agenda on June the 5th. So keep your ears and eyes out for that. Please feel free to go to our Twitter account or visit www.smartcityuk.com and take a look at the conference next year. Once again, thanks very much for your time today, and hopefully we'll speak to you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.